Hello, I would like to thank you for joining me today to talk about something we all have but probably don't think much about, our brain. I was thinking to start a short course as an introduction to the basic of neuroscience, but don't worry, it's not going to be complicated. Before we start, have you ever wondered why your brain controls your body, your thoughts, or even your emotions? Well, by the end of this presentation and in general by the end of the whole course, I hope you'll not only understand what makes the brain so extraordinary, but you'll also see how our nervous system impacts every single thing we do. So let's get started. Now that we've set the stage, let's talk about our today's objective, understanding the nervous system, exploring what the nervous system is. So before diving into some specific topics, I thought to start with a general idea of the nervous system. So we can think of our nervous system as our personal communication body. Here it's the nervous system, which consists of the brain and the spinal cord, and then we have here a lot of nerves. The nervous system is reliable. It's very complicated. It coordinates our muscles. It monitors our organs. It helps us process everything we see, hear, or even feel. It is also the reason you are able to sit, listen to me, for example, talking, and at the same time wonder, for example, what's for lunch. In other words, the nervous system is the hero behind every action, thought, and reactions we have. So I really hope that by the end of these presentations you'll find out what the nervous system is and why it is so vital for us and to being human. So, what is the nervous system? It is essentially the body's communication network. It's highly complex. It coordinates actions and processes sensory information by transmitting signals throughout the body. Its primary role is to detect changes in environment, and it works with the endocrine system to respond to these changes, ensuring, for example, that the body maintains balance or homeostasis. Understanding this system gives us insight into how organisms interact with their surroundings and how it responds to challenges. From coordinating actions to processing sensory information, the nervous system plays a vital role in maintaining life and enabling behavior. The nervous regulation of the body function is based on the activity of various nervous centers that process information and then formulate commands that are transmitted to the effector. So from this perspective, each nervous system can be divided into two functional compartments. So we have two compartments. We have the sensory compartment where the information is collected at the receptor level. And we have the motor compartment, which transmits command to the effector. So the effector is the organ or the gland that will perform or will respond as a behavior, as a reaction. Thus, every nervous organ has those two fundamental functions, the sensory function and the motor function. But of course, at the level of the cerebral hemisphere, a third function emerge. That's the psychic function. To better understand the sensory and the motor component, I put here this figure, which represents the nervous arc reflex or reflex arc, which is a pathway by which a reflex action occurs. It involves a simple automatic response to a stimulus. Here is the stimulus without the need for conscious thought, and if we follow this pathway, we will see that the brain is not involved. The basic components of a reflex arc include the receptor here at the level of the fingers, which will sense the stimulus. It can be the heat in our example, the pain, or any other stimuli. The sensory neuron, which the blue one, the blue line, which will sense the signal and will transmit the signal to the receptor, to the spinal cord. The spinal cord, it will be the integration center where the signal will be processed, and then the spinal cord will send it to the motor neuron. The motor neuron, the efferent neuron, the red line, will carry the response signal to the effector, the muscle, or it can be in other cases the gland. The effector, the muscle, will execute the response. So in our case, we will pull our hand away from the hot surface. As we can see, this process is very fast. It allows a quick protective response, like pulling our hand away from a hard surface without the brain's involvement in the initial response. Of course, the reflex arc is very fast, is faster than explaining all about the arc reflex. To summarize the two compartments of the nervous system and to give some examples, so we have those two compartments of the nervous system, the sensory compartment. For example, we can imagine we touched a hot surface, so the receptors in our skin will detect the high temperature and will send this sensory information to our nervous system. It will arrive in sensory compartment, which will process the information and passes it to the second compartment, to the motor compartment. After processing the sensory information, yes, the hot surface, the motor compartment will act. It will send a command to our muscle to pull our hand away quickly from the heat source. Of course, these examples they are divided and provided as a didactic approach. In the didactic approach, Otherwise, in reality, sensory and motor functions are interlinked and contribute to the unified complex activities of the nervous system. So the separation of the nervous system functions into sensory, motor, or psychic function is artificial, schematic, and of course is done for the didactic purposes. In reality, there is no sensory activity without a motor manifestation and vice versa, while psychic states results from the integration of the first two. The entire activity of the nervous system takes place as a unified whole within its extraordinary diversity. So in this scheme, I provide you some examples of the unified activity of the nervous system. For example, we can suppose we heard a loud noise. So we had a sensory input. The brain received an auditory signal. Our body may instinctively turn towards the noise, so here we have the motor response to the stimuli. But at the same time, our brain integrates this input and creates an emotional or psychic response. It can be fear or curiosity, so we don't have a pure motor response. We can have at the same time an emotional reaction. Another example of the integration of the sensory, motor, and psychic functions, so all three together. And the example is from a situation when we are riding a bicycle. So we have the sensory input coming from our eyes and ears that can help us maintaining our balance, our equilibrium. We have motor outputs that allow us to pedal and steer and control the bicycle. And also we have our psychic state that can be in a focus or relaxations mode that integrates these processes and help us maintain a smooth control. So, of course, it's very important to clarify those two components of the nervous system, the sensory and motor components, and we will see later on that we need this information for understanding the nervous system and the functioning of the brain and the spinal cord and so on. But at the same time, we should keep in mind that everything is much more complicated, and sometimes for didactic purposes the information is just simplified or made simple for the reason to understand that complex information. Before going to the structure of the nervous system, I would like to mention that the nervous system emerged around 1 billion years ago when single-cell organisms began forming multicellular groups. Why was that necessary? Because being bigger had its advantages, of course. You were less likely to get eaten and more likely to eat others. But being bigger also meant we needed systems to coordinate those actions, and that's where the nervous system came in. From nervous nets in jellyfish to central cords in brain and vertebrates, the nervous system evolved and became centralized and turned into this form with brains and spinal cords, and this evolutionary advancement opened the door to advanced behavior and higher cognitive function. So here we have the scheme of the nervous system and its structure, and as we can see from this picture, we have two main components, or we can say the nervous system is divided into two main components. So we have the central nervous system, or CNS, and the peripheral nervous system, or PNS. The CNS comprises the brain and the spinal cords, and they function as the command center that processes and sends out signals. The peripheral nervous system consists of nerves. We have the cranial nerves and the spinal cord nerves that connects the CNS with the rest of the body, ensuring thus communication between the brain through cranial nerves and the spinal cord through spinal cords with the organs. Together, this system coordinates all bodily functions and responses. The peripheral nervous system is further divided, so those cranial and spinal cord nerves are further divided in sensory nerves fiber and motor nerves fiber, as we saw previously those two components of the nervous system. The peripheral nervous system, those two types of nerves fibers form to divide the nervous system into two other types of components. So we have the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. The somatic nervous system, the sensory nerves and motor nerves fibers connect the central nervous system through those nerves to the skeletal muscle and the skin, and the autonomic nervous system connects the central nervous system through the cranial spinal cord nerves and those sensory and motor nerves fibers with the smooth muscle and the glands. The autonomic nervous system at his end itself has two main components, the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is activating in the flight or fly response in emergencies, and as a mnemonic trick, just to remember which system goes with which state, we should remember that S from the sympathetic will go, of course, with the stress response, and in the end this sympathetic system will activate in these stress situations, in emergencies that activates this flight or fight response. And we have the parasympathetic system, which is responsible for rest and recovery. I also mentioned here the enteric system, which manages digestion. It's very discussed lately, and there are a lot of studies mentioning its important role in coordinating the nervous system in general. The somatic nervous system controls voluntary actions such as moving arms, legs, and the autonomic nervous system, in contrast, will govern involuntary processes like breathing and heart rate. So this diagram shows the hierarchical structure of the nervous system, and it breaks down the nervous system into those two components, the CNS and PNS. The PNS is connected to the CNS, connects the CNS and the rest of the body through the nerves, the cranial and spinal cord nerves, and it's responsible both for voluntary, somatic, and involuntary autonomic control. And the autonomic nervous system is further divided into sympathetic stress response and parasympathetic relaxation and recovery system. You can pause if you need more time to analyze this diagram. You can pause and then take your time to see and understand this diagram. All right, now that we know the structure of the nervous system, we saw it's kind of complicated. We understand that it's a communication network. So now we will meet the basic units of the nervous system, the neurons. The neurons are the first cells, or not necessarily the first cell, but the most famous cells of the nervous tissue. They are specialized cells. They are responsible for receiving, processing, and sending or choosing not to send information all over your body. So every time we move a finger, blink, or even think about taking a nap, for example, our neurons are firing and sending electrical signals very fast. Our brain has around 86 billion neurons. They are working together and keep us alive, learning, and so on. Neurons has like any other cell organoids. They can be found in the cell body, and it has dendrites. This has these branches, two types of branches, a shorter and numerous branches, dendrites, and it has a longer branch, the axon, that will transmit the information received by the dendrites. So the dendrites are the antenna that will collect information, and then the information will be processed at the cell body and then transmitted to the axon. Of course, it's very logical that we will need a lot of branches, because we can in this way receive a lot of information from different neurons. It will be a processing stage here at the bodies, at the cell body, and then in the end it will be decided the information that will be transmitted to the other cells. The information will be transmitted through the axon. In the neuron, the information is transmitted through an electrical signals, but at the end of the neuron, the information, the electrical signal is transducted or transformed into a chemical transmission, and it will be transmitted via some chemicals called neurotransmitters to other cells. Neurons, they help transmitting very fast information to other cells. So this system will allow rapid and precise communication throughout the body. Neurons, they do not work alone, so they work together and they form pathways and networks that enable perception, movement, and behavior. Their importance cannot be overstated. They are the building blocks of the nervous system, so they are important cells that form nervous tissue. Of course, neurons are very popular, so I'm sure you heard of, but the nervous tissue consists also from another type of cells, the supporting cells, or they are called glia or glial cells, and they form along with the neurons the nervous tissue. In this picture we see a lot of cells, and we will see that these glial cells, there are several types of glial cells. Neurons, while neurons are the stars of the nervous system, they don't work alone. And if they are the stars, of course, they need some personnel to cater for their needs. And in 1856, a pathologist Rudolf Virchow discovered those cells, those glia supporting cells. Also the name glia comes from the Greek word for glue. So glial cells, or glia, they essentially provide support by maintaining the environment needed for neurons to function. So additionally, we have here in the nervous tissue also the neurovascular unit that regulates blood flow to the brain and maintaining the high energy demands of neurons during activity. So just to understand these pictures, we are in the nervous system. We are in the central nervous system, in the brain. Here we have the neuron, as we can now identify the neuron based on the dendrites. Those two types of processes, the dendrites and the axon, and it is surrounded by other types of cells. So without these supporting players, the nervous system could not perform efficiently. And here are represented 4 different types of glial cells found in the central nervous system. So we have the ependymal cells, the light pink. We have the astrocyte cells, the green cells. So we can see that they are glued to the neurovascular unit, so they will provide oxygen for the neurons. Also in blue we have the oligodendrocytes. They are very similar to Schwann cell in the PNS, and they will form the myelin sheet that will isolate the axon of the neurons. We will find out exactly more about those cells in another lecture, but for now just to mention those It's those cells that form the neuron in the nervous tissue. And also the fourth type of cells are the one in red. They are microglial cells. So glial cells has several functions. In the past, they were thought that they do not have such important role in the nervous system. That are not very important. But as we can see from this slide, they have quite big number of functions. So they hold neurons in place. They provide nutrients and oxygens for the neurons. They prevent interference between neighboring neurons. They destroy pathogens and remove dead neurons. They have significant aid in synaptic connections and neurotransmissions, and they are also involved in physiological processes like breathing. So quite important, and they have play a significant role in all the work neurons are doing. There are researches and studies that state that the glial cell may outnumber neurons in some areas, but the general consensus in the literature suggests a ratio of 1 neurons per 1 glial cells per 1 neurons. So that's it. Basic information of the nervous system. Today we explored the nervous system, our body's command center, and just to wrap up, it consists of two main divisions, the central and the peripheral nervous system. Those two systems work hand in hand. The central nervous system is our brain and spinal cord and act as the processing hub, making sense of the world and sending commands. Meanwhile, the peripheral nervous system acts as the delivery network, carrying signals to the rest of the body. We discussed that the nervous system, how the nervous system handles sensory input and motor output and everything in between, keeping us moving, thinking and feeling. We also touched the structure of the nervous tissue, and we mentioned those two types of cells, neurons and glia cells. And that's what we have discussed today during this course. I would like you to thank you, especially those sticking around until the end of the presentation. I hope you've learned something new and exciting about the amazing nervous system, its structure and its main cells. And if you enjoy this, please don't forget to like, comment and share your thoughts or even your questions below. And if you are not already part of our community, hit that subscribe button. See you in the next one. Bye.